Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Renew You Students YouTube channel. We've been going through what is the story of Esther and how really the Jews in this time are all in trouble. And Esther had become queen, and she was a Jew but kept it secret for the right moment, where once the whole plot of Haman was revealed to the king, and Haman died, it was now time to look how is it that we would be able to save what were the Jews. Because Haman's plot was that using the power of the king to do decrees that cannot be overruled, Haman had it that at a certain time, at the almost like the end of the year, the people could attack and kill the Jews. So with Haman's plot now revealed to the king, now it is Esther and Mordecai's job to figure out how is it that the decree of the king can be stopped, or in some way the Jews would be protected from it.
So after Haman had died, remember he died on the gallows that he had actually made for Mordecai, he was actually promoted to Haman's spot. The king was very impressed with Mordecai and gave him a high seat of honor. So Mordecai was the king's right-hand man now. So with Mordecai as the king's right-hand man and Esther as queen, they all worked on trying to come up with a new decree. Now remember, the king couldn't just write anything that would make the previous decree void. So the previous decree would still be in place. So they had to find a way to make a new decree that would be in addition to the previous decree. And so they came up with a really sneaky way of going about it. The previous decree was that on a certain day, anybody could take up arms and kill some of the Jews. And so what the new decree said was that people could still take up arms and attempt to kill the Jews, but the Jews could now defend themselves. They could get their own weapons, their own things, and they could basically fight back, whereas with the previous decree, they were not allowed to do that. So word spread out among the whole nation that the Jews were now able to fight back and that they were ready to. And so it unleashed this really cool thing where everybody became super afraid of the actual Jews. And so nobody was really willing to fight against the Jews, and so everybody started getting more and more nervous as this day came. They weren't as excited as they were before to kill the Jews, because now the Jews could fight back, and the people knew the Jews' history, and so a fear of the Jews came into place here. Next week, we are going to finish up this story of what happens on that actual day. And then we are going to talk a bit more about how the story of Esther still relates to us today. Because obviously this is a really cool story about people in a specific time period. But how does that relate to where we are today, where we don't have nations ruling over us? Our people aren't necessarily being killed with a decree from the president or anything like that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how the story of Esther applies to us today, and how God doesn't change throughout all of these times. And so stick around for that. We'll talk about that more next week. And so until then, we will see you next week.
See you.